The old man stood alone in the middle of Main Street, gray hair silver in the afternoon sun, weathered hands resting on the pistols at his hips. 7 riders approached from the south, dust rising behind them like smoke from a funeral pyre. The townspeople of Silverton had already disappeared, shutters closed, doors barred, children pulled inside. They'd seen this before. They knew what happened when strangers came looking for blood. But what the 7 riders didn't know, what no one who'd ever threatened this small Arizona border town had lived long enough to spread, was why Silverton still existed at all. In 15 years, 12 different gangs had ridden in with the same intentions. 12 gangs had ridden away in wooden boxes or hadn't ridden away at all. The old man's name was Samuel Blackwood, and he was 67 years old. And he was the only reason 200 people could sleep at night without wondering if they'd wake up to flames and screams. This was about to become 13. 15 years earlier, Silverton had been dying. Population, 43. No law, no hope. Just a collection of adobe buildings and desperate people clinging to land nobody else wanted, too stubborn or too poor to leave. 3 different bandit groups treated it like a personal bank, riding through whenever they needed supplies or entertainment or just wanted to remind everyone who really owned the territory. Samuel Blackwood had arrived on a Tuesday in May 1872, leading a tired horse and carrying everything he owned in 2 saddlebags. He was 52 then, already gray, already tired. He didn't tell anyone where he'd come from or why. He bought a small house at the edge of town, paid in gold coin, and asked where he could find work. Work? Old Miguel, who ran what passed for a general store, had laughed. "Mister, we got plenty of work. Problem is, we got no guarantee we'll live long enough to finish it. Delgado gang was through here last week. Took half our food. Shot Martinez's oldest boy when he objected. You want work? I suggest you work somewhere else." Sam had nodded slowly. "How often they come through?" "Once a month, maybe. Sometimes 2 different groups in the same week." "And you got no law?" "Marshall tried to set up here 3 years back. Found him strung up from that cottonwood by the creek." Sam had looked at the tree. Still had rope marks on the branch. "I see." That evening, he'd unpacked his saddlebags. Most men traveling carried clothes, supplies, maybe a spare gun. Sam unpacked 14 weapons. Rifles, revolvers, a shotgun, boxes of ammunition that seemed endless, and a worn leather journal with names written in neat columns, dates beside each one, locations marked. Maria Vasquez, who lived in the house next door, had watched through her window. She was 37 then, widowed 2 years, raising her daughter Elena alone. She'd seen the guns. She'd seen the journal. And she'd seen something else, the way Sam's hands moved over the weapons, checking mechanisms with the automatic precision of a man who'd spent decades doing nothing else. "You're going to get yourself killed," she'd told him the next morning, bringing coffee as an excuse to talk. "Whatever you're planning, those men, they're animals. They're not alone, and they've killed better men than you." Sam had accepted the coffee with a quiet thank you. "Probably. Then why?" He'd looked past her, toward the cottonwood tree. "Because somebody should." The Delgado gang came through 2 weeks later. 6 riders. They'd been hitting Silverton for 3 years, knew every hiding spot, knew exactly how much they could take without killing the town entirely. They rode in laughing, confident, already dividing up what they'd steal. Sam had been waiting in the street. The gunfight lasted 11 seconds. When it ended, 5 men were dead and 1, the youngest Delgado brother, 17 years old, was running south with a bullet-grazed shoulder and a story that would spread across the territory like wildfire. Sam had reloaded his revolvers, collected the bodies, and buried them outside town. He'd marked each grave with a stone. Then he'd gone home, eaten dinner, and gone to sleep. The next morning, he'd nailed a piece of wood to a post at the south end of Main Street. Town under protection. Turn back or join the graves. 43 people had watched him work. Nobody said anything. Nobody knew what to say. 3 weeks later, another gang tried. For riders this time, thinking the Delgado story was exaggerated. It wasn't. For more graves appeared on the hill. Then 5 more. Then 3. Then 8. The largest group, convinced that numbers would overwhelm one old man. 8 more graves. By the end of the first year, 26 men had died trying to take what Silverton had. By the end of the second year, the raids had stopped almost entirely. Word had spread. There was a town in Arizona territory where an old man stood guard, and he never missed, and he never stopped, and he never lost. The population began to grow. People heard about a place where you could build something without fear of it burning down. Families came. Merchants. Farmers. A proper general store opened. A saloon. A church. Miguel expanded his shop. Maria opened a seamstress business. Elena Vasquez grew from a girl of 13 into a woman, watching Sam every day from her window, watching him walk the perimeter at dawn, watching him check his weapons at noon, watching him sit on his porch at dusk, scanning the horizon. Why does he do it? She'd asked her mother 1,000 times. Because someone has to, Maria always answered. And because he's the only one who can. By 1887, Silverton had 200 residents, a school, 3 churches, businesses, families, children born there who'd never known a raid, never known terror, never known what it felt like to wonder if tonight was the night everything burned. And through all 15 years, through every threat, through every gang that tried, Sam Blackwood had stood in the street and made sure they failed. He'd killed 43 men. He'd wounded 17 more. He'd never asked for payment, never asked for thanks, never asked for anything except to be left alone when the work was done. He was 67 years old now. His hair was white. His hands shook slightly in cold weather. He recovered slower from injuries. The last fight, 6 months ago, had left him with cracked ribs that still ached. He moved stiffer, saw less well in dim light. But he could still shoot, and he could still stand. Maria had died the year before, peacefully, of age and illness. Before she passed, she'd made him promise something. Train Elena. Teach her, because you won't be here forever, and this town will still need protecting. He kept that promise. For 8 months, Elena Vasquez had been learning how to shoot, how to read men, how to know when talking might work and when only bullets would. She was 28, lean and hard from frontier life, with her mother's wisdom and her father's courage. She stood now in the doorway of the sheriff's office, a title Sam had never officially claimed, but everyone used anyway, watching him face 7 riders alone. "Let me help," she'd said before he walked out. "Not yet," he'd replied, "but soon. Watch. Remember, before we continue, I need to ask you something. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. We have incredible stories like this every week, and your support helps us keep bringing them to you. Now, let's find out what happened next. The 7 riders stopped 50 feet away. Their leader, Carlos Ramirez, dismounted slowly. He was 40, muscular, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Behind him, his 6 men spread out, hands near their weapons. "Samuel Blackwood," Carlos said. His voice carried across the empty street. "You killed my father 14 years ago, Antonio Ramirez. You remember?" Sam remembered. Antonio Ramirez had led one of the early gangs. 8 riders had refused to turn back, had died with a bullet through his heart in this same street. "I remember," Sam said. "He was riding to Mexico. You could have let him pass. He stopped here first, killed a man for his horse, beat a woman for refusing him. I couldn't let him pass." Carlos nodded slowly. "I know. I've heard the stories. The great Samuel Blackwood, the man who protects this shit town in the middle of nowhere. The legend." He spat. "You know what you are to me? You're the man who murdered my father. And today, I'm going to murder you. And then I'm going to burn this town to ashes. And then I'm going to find everyone you ever cared about and make them wish they'd never heard your name." "You could try," Sam said quietly. "I've got 7 men. You're an old man with shaky hands. Your father had 8. You know how that ended." Carlos smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "My father didn't know who you were." "I do. I've spent 14 years preparing for this. I know you're fast. I know you're accurate. I know you're tough to kill." He gestured to his men. "So I brought enough bullets to be sure." The street was silent. No wind, no birds, just 7 killers and 1 old man and 200 people hiding behind walls, praying. "Last chance," Sam said. "Right away. Live." "No," Carlos said. "Today, the legend dies." They drew together, all 7 at once, thinking numbers would overwhelm skill. They were wrong. Sam's hands blurred. 2 shots before Carlos's gun cleared leather. Bang! Bang! The men on the far left and far right fell, bullets through their chests. His body was already turning, already moving. Bang! A third man stumbled back, clutching his throat. 3 seconds. 3 down. 4 remain. Carlos fired. Missed. Sam had rolled left, behind a water trough. Wood splintered as bullets tore through it. He came up firing. Bang! Bang! 1 shot caught Carlos in the shoulder, spinning him. The second killed the man behind him. 3 remain. 2 men charged, thinking close quarters would help. Sam's left-hand gun came up. Bang! 1 man's knee exploded. He screamed, fell. The second man was 5 feet away when Sam's right-hand gun spoke. Bang! Point blank. 2 remain. Carlos was still up, wounded, gun raised. The last man, standing, was trying to circle around. Sam's world narrowed to targets, timing, geometry, the mathematics of death. He fired at the circling man first. Bang! Shoulder wound. Not lethal, but disabling. The gun fell from useless fingers. Carlos fired again. This bullet found Sam, grazed his left side, burning, blood spreading. Sam ignored it. His right-hand gun tracked to Carlos. 1 remain. Your father died fast, Sam said quietly. I can give you the same mercy. Or you can run, and I'll shoot you in the back like the dog you are. Choose. Carlos chose wrong. He raised his gun. Sam's shot took him in the chest, just left of center. Carlos dropped, gun clattering on the dirt. He was still breathing, but barely. Blood bubbled at his lips. Sam walked over, gun steady. Your father was a killer. You became a killer. It ends here. Not over. Carlos wheezed. More coming. Let them come, Sam said. I'll be here. Carlos died 7 seconds later. The street filled with smoke and the copper smell of blood and the sudden, overwhelming silence that follows violence. Sam stood in the center of it all, bleeding, breathing hard. 7 bodies. 7 more graves to dig. He'd started with 20. Now 43. And apparently more were coming. He reloaded both guns with movements that had become automatic over 40 years. His side burned where the bullet had grazed him. Not deep, not dangerous, just painful, and it would heal slower than it used to. Everything healed slower now. Elena ran out from the sheriff's office. You're hit. I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've bled before. He looked at the bodies. Help me get them out of the street. Then we'll talk. They worked in silence, dragging corpses to a wagon. The townspeople emerged slowly, cautiously. Some helped. Others just stared. Doc Harrison, 72 and barely steadier than Sam, examined the wound. Graze, he confirmed. Clean it, bandage it, rest for a day. You'll be fine. Can't rest, Sam said. He said more coming. Then we need help. Elena said firmly. We need deputies. We need to build something more than just you standing alone in the street. I've been standing alone for 15 years. And how much longer can you keep doing it? You're 67. You got grazed today. What about next time? What about the time after that? Sam looked at her, saw Maria in her eyes, saw the same strength, the same wisdom. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time to pass the torch. Train me properly. Not just shooting, but all of it. The way you read threats. The way you know when to talk and when to fight. The way you've kept this town alive. She paused. My mother asked you to teach me. So teach me. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right. Starting tomorrow, you're my deputy. Official. You'll wear a badge. You'll learn everything I know. He looked south, toward the horizon. Because you're right. I won't be here forever. And Silverton will still need protecting. The months that followed were transformative. Elena learned not just to shoot, though she became deadly with a rifle and competent with a pistol, but to think like a guardian. Sam taught her to read tracks, to spot trouble before it arrived, to understand the psychology of men who live by violence. Most will back down if you give them a way out without losing face, he explained during one patrol. But some want the violence. Need it. For those, you don't talk. You just do what needs doing. How do you tell the difference? The eyes. Men who want to live will look for exits. Men who want to die will look only at you. She learned to walk the perimeter at dawn, checking for tracks. Learned which merchants were prone to disputes and how to mediate before they escalated. Learned how to be present without being overbearing, how to project strength without seeking fights. The town noticed. We're getting a real sheriff's department, Miguel said approvingly. About time. 3 months into her training, for drifters rode in. Elena and Sam met them in the south end of town by the sign. Turn back, Elena said firmly. The leader, a scarred man in his 30s, laughed. Who's going to make us, girl? The old man. He looked at Sam. You're the legend. Huh? You don't look like much. Sam said nothing. Just stood there, hands near his guns. I'll make you, Elena said. And if I can't, he will. Your choice. Ride away or ride in a box. Something in her voice, or maybe in the absolute stillness of the old man beside her, made the drifters reconsider. The leader studied them both for a long moment. Then he spat, turned his horse, and rode away. His men followed. Good, Sam said when they were gone. Talking works more often than people think. But Sam was slowing down. The Gray's wound had healed, but his energy flagged faster. He slept longer, moved stiffer. One morning in November, he woke with crushing pain in his chest and couldn't catch his breath. Doc Harrison examined him in his small office, face grave. Your heart's failing, Sam, he said quietly. Could be a month, could be 6, but not longer than that. Any stress, any fight, it could stop. Just like that. Sam absorbed this without expression. How long have you known? Suspected for a year. The signs were there. But you don't listen to doctors. Never saw the point. See it now. You've got time to set things in order. Use it. Sam told Elena the next day. They sat on his porch, looking south toward the horizon. I'm dying, he said simply. Hard. Months, maybe less. She didn't cry. She'd been raised in a frontier town. She understood death. Then we make the most of the time we have. You teach me everything. Everything you haven't told me yet. There's not much left. There's always more. She turned to him. The town needs to know. They need to prepare. They need to know you can protect them. That's all they need. So they worked. Every day, Sam taught her the last pieces, where the weapons cache was buried outside town, which trails offered the best defensive positions, the names and faces of men who might still come looking for revenge, the moral weight of taking a life, even when justified. You'll carry it forever, he said during one quiet evening. Every man you kill, every choice you make, the weight never goes away. But if you're protecting innocence, if you're standing between evil and the helpless, then the weight is worth carrying. It means you're human. It means you care. Did you care about the 43? She asked. Every one, he said quietly. Even the ones who deserved it. Even the monsters. Because the moment you stop caring is the moment you become what you're fighting against. On a Friday in January 1888, Sam Blackwood stood on his porch at dawn, did his usual perimeter check, and came back satisfied. The town was safe. Elena was ready. His work was done. He went to sleep that night and didn't wake up. They found him the next morning, peaceful in his bed. He looked younger in death, the tension and vigilance finally gone from his face. Elena stood in his doorway for a long time, not crying, just processing. 15 years she'd watched this man. 8 months she'd learned from him. And now he was gone. The funeral was the largest gathering Silverton had ever seen. 200 residents. Another 50 from neighboring towns who'd heard the news. The old cottonwood tree, once a symbol of lawlessness, now shaded his grave. Doc Harrison gave the eulogy. Sam Blackwood came to us when we were dying. He stayed when others would have run. He stood when others would have hidden. He killed when necessary and grieved when most wouldn't. He built nothing with his hands. No buildings, no business, no monuments. But he built something greater. He built safety. He built a community. He built a future for people who'd had none. The old doctor's voice cracked. He stood so others could live. And that is how we will remember him. His headstone was simple, Samuel Blackwood. 1820 to 1888. He stood so others could live. Elena pinned on the sheriff's badge that same day. She didn't feel ready. Didn't feel worthy, but she wore it anyway because someone had to, and Sam had chosen her. The test came 2 weeks later. 5 riders approached from the south. Elena met them alone in the street, heart pounding, Sam's voice in her head. Most will back down if you give them a way out. Turn back, she called. The leader, a grizzled man in his 40s, looked at her with amusement. Where's the old man? Where's the legend? Dead, Elena said steadily. But I'm here, and this town is still under protection. You? He laughed. Girl, I've killed better men than you. Maybe, Elena said, but Sam Blackwood trained me. And before you decide to test that, you should know, he killed 43 men in 15 years defending this town. I'm standing here because he believed I could do the same. So ask yourself, is whatever you came here for worth finding out if he was right? The riders looked at each other, looked at the town, looked at the young woman with the badge and the rifle and the absolute certainty in her eyes. Shit, the leader muttered. Then he turned his horse and rode away. Elena watched them disappear into the distance, her hands shaking now that it was over. But she'd done it. Sam had been right. Most men, when given a way out, would take it. She turned and walked back toward the sheriff's office. The townspeople emerged, nodding to her, accepting her. She was the new guardian, the new protector, the new reason Silverton would survive. And she would be for the next 23 years. Time passed as it always does. Elena married a farmer named Thomas, had 3 children, and trained them all to shoot. She killed 7 men in her career, far fewer than Sam, because his reputation lived on long after him. Most threats heard the town where Samuel Blackwood had stood and decided to try somewhere else. She retired at 51, handing the badge to her eldest son, David. He served for 18 years before passing it to his daughter. The Vasquez family became synonymous with protection, with justice, with the idea that some places were worth defending and some battles were worth fighting. But every January, on the anniversary of Sam's death, the town gathered at the cottonwood tree. Children who'd never known him heard the stories. How he'd arrived when they were dying. How he'd stood alone against impossible odds. How he'd never asked for payment or praise. How he trained his successor and died knowing the town would be safe. Was he real? A young boy asked his grandmother in 1912. Or is it just a story? Elena, 72 now, smiled. He was real. I knew him. I learned from him. And everything you've heard is true. They say he never missed. Not quite, but close enough. They say he was the fastest gun in the West. I don't know about that, but he was the most determined, the most dedicated. He cared more about protecting people than about glory or legend. Why did he come here? Elena looked at the grave marker, worn now by years and weather. I asked him that once near the end. You know what he said? Because nobody else would. Because somebody had to. Because these people deserved a chance. The boy thought about this. I want to be like him when I grow up. Then be someone who stands between evil and the innocent, Elena said. Be someone who protects the helpless. Be someone who carries the weight so others don't have to. That's what Sam was. That's what made him a legend. Years later, when historians wrote about the settling of the Arizona Territory, they devoted paragraphs to Samuel Blackwood. They called him a folk hero, a legend, a symbol of frontier justice. They debated whether the stories were exaggerated, whether one man could truly have done what they claimed. But in Silverton, they didn't debate. They knew, because the town was still there, still thriving, still safe. And every sheriff who wore the badge knew they wore it, because an old man had once decided that somewhere, someone had to stand. So what do you think? Was Sam Blackwood justified in killing 43 men to protect one town? Is violence ever the answer, even when defending innocence? And could you have stood alone the way he did, knowing every bullet carried a moral weight you'd carry forever? Let me know in the comments what country you're listening from and what you think about Sam's choice. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. We bring you incredible true stories like this one every single week. Thank you for watching.